First off, we do not have Stuart Wall. Stuart is suffering from pneumonia, so Brad Kime, who's Vice President of Marketing with SignPost, has joined us. And I'll ask each of you to introduce yourself in a moment, but Keith Smith, who is the CEO of Payability, New York-based company that is in accounts receivable financing and acceleration. Essentially, the speed of money speeds up with the intimacy of all of these connections as well, and we want to talk about the influence of that. And finally, Jeff Tomlin, a longtime friend of BIA Kelsey from Vendasta Technologies, who has joined us from Saskatoon, his first time in Seattle, so welcome to the wet world of...
Thanks, love it.
Not even wet. So first off, let me have Jeff, if you just introduce yourself and talk a little about how Vendasta fits into the small business, medium-sized business market.
Yeah, so Jeff Tomlin, one of the co-founders and the CMO at Vendasta, and we got started in 2008 and been in this space probably since about the end of 2009. Started providing white label presence and reputation management tools for SMBs that are resold through channels. And a couple of years ago, we decided that the way to expedite our growth is to help our channel partners sell better. And so for the last couple of years, we've been trying to think really hard about that relationship between the agency and the SMB and how we can help increase the agency growth. And to that end, we've been building marketing automation tools and sales management solutions.
And Brad.
And I'm with SignPost. SignPost is a fully automated marketing system that we sell to small businesses. Our small business population that we target is a B2C small business, so somebody who's dealing with consumers. We create a CRM tool for them, which is, again, fully automated and populated by data, and it runs itself. So we are big believers in the small business success and participating in digital marketing, but we feel like making it as automated as possible is kind of the best solution.
And finally, Keith?
Yeah, Keith Smith with Payability, and we are a fintech company. We kind of consider ourselves alternative finance, more or less. Our customers are suppliers of digital marketplaces, so that might be an app developer who is getting paid, say, from Google or from Apple, or maybe it is a web publisher who's being paid from Facebook or from Twitter, or maybe even a hardware provider that's being paid by Amazon. And in each of those cases, they are being paid 30 or 60 days after the end of the month, and of course that's very difficult to be able to actually grow a business when you have real-time costs and your revenue is coming in 30 or 60 days after you generate it. So what we do is we pay our suppliers on a weekly basis, and then we get paid on regular payment terms from those marketplaces.
Great. So now, earlier in the day, one of the fundamental notions that people have talked about is that ratings and transparency in the marketplace is critically important, and managing your presence in the marketplace as a small business is an incredible challenge. A lot of the tools that are made for the enterprise don't scale down to the way that a small business works. They're built for teams, and most small businesses marketers might be half a person who's also trying to handle sales or trying to handle operations while simultaneously using tools that, like Salesforce, that seem to have been designed to cost $40,000 up front and then be more expensive later in terms of development. How has Vendasta addressed this opportunity, and particularly through the resellers like the agencies or the YPs, in terms of being able to bring that simplicity of communication and then the CRM-like functionality that brings back reviews, ongoing offers? How have you focused on improving that experience for the small business, and are you thinking as you do so about how they can be more on demand?
Yeah, so great thoughts. So first off, we focus on that relationship between the SMB and the agency first and foremost, and we've been thinking really hard about it. A couple of conditions in the marketplace that we've been thinking really hard about over the last little while in terms of what is important for us to understand in order to create growth and help our partners grow. First thing about the SMB is that we know from Kelsey research that they've always valued DIY components in digital offerings. And your research has stated that for some time. I think the LSA just came out with some numbers. Some 70% of SMBs indicate that they do some sort of DIY. But surprisingly, the vast majority of them don't really know if what they're doing is actually working. And we know also from working with SMBs that only about 10% of them that do DIY are going to achieve the results that they really want to achieve. And so unless they have a team, a marketing team, and they're that size of SMB, the vast majority would want to work with the marketing agency, get some assistance, and ultimately would like a single agency of record. So other conditions in the marketplace that are important to understand is that, number one, we know that SMBs are time-starved. And we also know that they're inundated with calls from marketing agencies. We know they receive a couple dozen calls every single week from marketing agencies. So the challenge comes for an agency: how do they actually stand out in this environment and create a relationship with SMBs? And our message to them is that they're going to have, with all of the marketing channels that they have to deal with these days and that SMBs have to deal with, they're going to have to think really hard about how they can employ some sort of marketing automation. And so to that end, we think that empathy is going to be the key to the growth and understanding what SMBs really want. So if they can provide something of free, and we're talking about on-demand, people want to be able to touch something and grab it and use it. SMBs are the same. They want to be able to touch something and grab it and play with it. And if you can give them some sort of free tool that they can play with and interact, and then you can watch their behavior, you can use that platform as a way to educate and inform them over time. You can create a relationship with them, and you can also see the ones that are self-selecting and ready to transact and ready to say, hey, I'm interested in this and I need some help. You can do that. And I think that the marketing programs in 2016 and beyond that are going to be really, really successful are the ones that aim to be helpful. And so this is sort of the approach that we're talking with our partners about, having a platform that is readily accessible to an SMB. Then you can use that platform to educate and inform and understand the ones that are ready to work with you.
So is it reasonable at this point to think about marketing automation tools for the plumber who's driving from location to location, really concerned about maximizing their time? Brad, as you guys are building SignPost and thinking in terms of maximizing not only the results, but the time to take advantage of the results you got from your marketing, it can't be a full-time job. How do you address and how do you explain that to an SMB?
Right. So we're doing things a little bit differently because we're going direct to that SMB as opposed to them relying on an agency. We're saying you don't need an agency. You can just work directly with our system that can replace that. So, for example, your question earlier about reviews and feedback. So, again, one of the obviously, I think 60% of consumers now are going to review sites before they make a decision on any sort of small business. But most small businesses don't have a feedback loop around customer interaction, so there's not a quick and simple tool, and as a result, feedback sites like Yelp get very adversely selected, so it's the person who has the bad experience who goes there as opposed to a more of a cross-section of who's going in. So we work in an onboarding call with a customer to set up what's the frequency that you want your transactions to have feedback. And so there's going to be an automated feedback loop that's going to go out, whether that's via text or whether that's via email, depending on what the customer wants. And it's very quick and simple. It's a way to get just more broader-based testimonials that then we can do a one-click post to a Google Plus or a Yelp in order to keep that more balanced. That happens automated. That plumber can keep doing his job and driving and worrying about other people that he's deploying. But yet this marketing and the feedback loops are happening independently of all of that. And so our tools are really built with that in mind so that it can happen, things get posted. They can, by doing that, with our clients, they see a big increase in 4- and 5-star reviews because it's, again, more balanced. And they see a big decrease in the lower ones because the bad feedback, the owner can't intercept that. We don't post those. It comes directly to them, and they can then, again, go back very directly as opposed to, again, I don't think people wake up and want to go to Yelp and put a bad review on there. They're frustrated. They're trying to voice an opinion, and they've not gotten very good response from the SMB. And so if we can close that loop and make that faster, a lot of those 1- and 2-star things that you see kind of go away.
So now you're describing keeping it simple in a lot of ways in terms of the engagement model and getting that feedback. Agencies, however, tend to want to combine multiple channels and help people communicate across more of them. And our research shows that when you get past a certain number or a certain size spend, the number of channels people are in doubles. Just like that, right off the top. And so ongoing integration challenges become the next big step. Do you find with agencies that they're driving you to develop a broader array of services that can be managed on behalf of the SMB?
Yeah, and we've determined that we can't build all of the things that our channel partners, of course, want, and all of the things that they need in order to serve the SMB. And so to that end, and to facilitate this idea of marketing automation and around a platform that the SMB can interact with and learn from, we've built a product catalog. And the catalog can provide information about not just the tools that we can offer through the agencies, but that third parties are offering. So we've integrated other people like DevHub here in the good people. So to that end, our marketing automation system will think about other aspects of an SMB's digital footprint out there and what things that we can learn about that are specific to different types of digital solutions. And we'll continue to integrate those digital solutions so that our products can select and build their own product catalog.
So, and your concentration then on the small business as compared to the agency level or reseller space, do you see the on-demand tools emerging that you'll be able to easily bring and expose to the SMB in a way? Do you see them evolving quickly, or is a focus on SMB engagement and on-demand kind of lagging at this point?
No, I don't think it is lagging. I think the tools are out there, and it's just a matter of can you integrate them. One of the things that we have spent a lot of time doing actually is integrating our tools into payments data and kind of crossing that chasm so that our tool will have individual customer, but I can look at the actual spend because I'm going to pull off of merchant processing. I can pull off first name, last name, and spend by transaction. I can aggregate that, and what that allows me to do is then measure the effectiveness of the marketing spend, whether it's by an agency or whether it's by an individual through tracking numbers. And specifically, if I spent $10,000 this month on Facebook ads, I can look at the absolute effectiveness, who was impacted by that, what was their incremental change in revenue, and was that a good spend or a bad spend. So for adding in kind of payments and other alternative data sources, which are all out there, I think clearly enhances the effectiveness, and I think that's what you're starting to see, the integration of these different data sets.
So Keith, now there's a cost obviously in financing your AR, but there's a huge benefit in terms of being able to reinvest quickly. What does that look like in terms of the average result that you're able to enable for a client that comes on board for your service?
So I don't know if we're far enough along where I could give you very significant averages. We're about a year in.
What are you aiming for?
So what we are aiming for, and kind of the purpose of, or the value that we add when we are working with a client, is that we will allow them to grow quickly. And you think about, if you are an app developer who is growing at 5 or maybe even 10% week over week, which a lot of these app developers are especially when they first get started, there is no form of traditional finance that is possibly going to work for them. And so the alternative to having some sort of financing that is highly flexible is that you just have to grow slower. And so maybe you've maxed out your credit cards, you've borrowed money from every one of your rich uncles that you can borrow money from, angel investors, maybe you put a little bit of money into you, but you still can't do continue to grow, and so we provide that capital. And so sure, there may be some, as we like to say, we are not always the cheapest form of capital, but we tend to be the most flexible form of capital. And when you allow a small company like that to be able to start to grow very, very rapidly week over week, then they almost become price insensitive at that point in time.
Well, we heard from MasterCard earlier about how they can facilitate connections between businesses. Do you see FinTech as increasingly being one of the pivot points for API integration, the combination of analytics and financial information in order to better understand how to grow a business, so that even part of the service can be feedback Jeff was talking about, to the business about how to improve.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think it's interesting that one of the things that is severely lacking in finance, but has certainly happened in other sectors, is that there are apps and services that are ecosystem aware, and they are, they plug into other systems, they pull data from other systems, they can be very helpful. They can maybe shortcut a scenario where you would otherwise have to fill out a long form and provide a bunch of information, but you've already provided that information somewhere else where that information is available via an API. I think finance is just kind of is very behind the curve in terms of being able to develop services that are ecosystem aware, and certainly when it comes to SMBs and the financing for SMBs, that's absolutely the case. So that's part of what we view is what we are bringing to the table, is a technology focus on finance, so that you can actually have that experience. We were talking earlier about when the first time you took an Uber ride and you just got out of the car when you got done, and it was shocking. It was just kind of like, wow, that was really easy. And those are the kinds of experiences that we're looking for when we can meet a new customer online, not actually meet them, and we can have them funded within the first 24 hours, and then they're just getting a regular payment from us on a weekly basis. We want them to go, wow, geez, that was really easy, and I didn't have to fill out a bunch of information. They were able to just kind of suck all this information in from some credentials that I provided them. That's the kind of experience that we're trying to provide to SMBs.
Now, fintech is probably the hottest destination for venture capital right now. Do you see a big acceleration in the availability of services coming for the small business over the next 18 months as these investments start to provide fruit?
I think so. I hope so. Generally speaking, I hope not a lot directly in our space, just to be clear. But I think so generally. I do think that we were talking about this just previously about how there is this weird scenario going on right now where fintech is very hot and very exciting, and yet the public valuations of fintech companies are taking a beating right now. So I'm not sure how that's going to end up kind of reconciling itself in the market. But certainly I think that there's been a significant amount of fintech investing, and I would imagine that we'll start to see the fruits of that in the next couple of quarters.
And Jeff, we've talked about this before. Only about 22% of all small business is really using marketing automation at this point. Where are we in the adoption curve for those small businesses, those companies that want to grow from 1 to 2 people to 5 to 10, in terms of the availability of reasonably priced and effective tools? How do you see that market starting to evolve over the next few months, or next 18 months?
Yeah, I see it evolving this way. There's going to be more and more marketing automation solutions that are coming up, and more niche solutions to serve certain markets. There's a lot of big solutions out there like the Eloqua, Marketo, and Pardot, Infusionsoft, and even HubSpot. Really challenging to integrate, and really they're expensive. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, and by the way, we use Pardot at Vendasta, have been for a while. We were a Salesforce customer. We're now newly recovering. The therapy's been good. And if you show me somebody that's super happy about their Salesforce integration and feel like they've just nailed it, I've got a piece of land for you that I'm going to sell you.
Saskatoon's lovely this time of year.
It's lovely, most times of the year. And so what we found using Pardot integrated with Salesforce is that even after you put all of the work into integrating it into our system, and you create all of the rules and you build all your content, at the end of the day, you're sending generic emails, canned responses, and they're not really customized. So the real key part of marketing automation is the data that you've got behind it if you want it to be successful. And so there's a critical need for niche marketing automation systems that serve very specific markets.
I think you're absolutely right about the niche. The qualities of we treat business like it's a generic function, but every business is unique in a lot of different ways. Medical services, auto repair, they all have their own flavors. Is that one of the things that you think is missing from the market for SMBs at this point? And I ask you first, Brad, are we really at a point where we need specialized tools at the local level?
I think it can always help. It just matters as to the cost effectiveness of being able to build that, and that's the art of it, is how do you scale that so that it becomes cost effective for that small business. Certainly marketing on behalf of a chiropractor is different than marketing on behalf of a restaurant. At the same time, at the core of it, a lot of it's going to be based on email, text, a lot of the base level things kind of remain the same, and just how can you customize that? Technology can allow you to do that and make it look like it's pretty local and just somebody really drove that, but really it can actually be driven pretty centrally. So we believe that that's where it's going to continue to happen, and more sophisticated systems behind the scenes to make it look really local, but yet it's driven pretty centrally about how people can just customize a few fields and make that work.
And do you see agencies sort of driving that in terms of their specialization, or YPs in terms of trying to provide a narrowly focused service for small business so that they can begin to participate in some of these more advanced marketing capabilities?
Yeah, you see that, and you see a lot of that in terms of vertical players right now, doing a much better job than the horizontal players, but definitely agency driven.
So one of the things that we've also seen happen, and this brings us to the on-demand point squarely, is Amazon in particular is going to be doing local deliveries, and in many ways is starting to offer just simply to manage small business inventory so that there's a person near the customer, but the product could be delivered from a local fulfillment facility. Do you see big players in on-demand potentially coming in, Uber, Lyft, Ship, starting to offer APIs that tie in or even provide full logistics and fulfillment services to these businesses? This also goes to the idea that a lot of retail space is not useful anymore. It's not important that you be centrally located. It'd be important that you are at their house. So do you see that kind of evolution beginning to happen as you talk with various sources of partnership or potential partners?
Yeah, so I see that could happen down the road. I think that in the local space, specifically the interaction between agencies and SMBs and media companies and SMBs, in terms of on-demand, is sort of in its infancy. I've been thinking really hard about it lately and observing the work from all of our agents. I think hard about a lot of things. I often consider myself an agnostic, dyslexic, and insomniac. I've lied awake many a night wondering if there really is a dog. Just seeing if you're listening. So one thing that I'm really, really surprised at is how many media companies, for example, don't have this idea of a product catalog. It's really, really difficult for an SMB to find out what these companies actually offer and that can help. So in terms of on-demand, there's very few things that they have available to an SMB that SMB can go and they can sign up and they can use, maybe something free, that can then be used as a tool to create a relationship with them and engage and inform them over time. And so as we introduce this idea of sort of a freemium products and this idea of product catalogs, it's something new to a lot of people that we're working with. And so I think that in the on-demand aspects are really in their infancy in terms of that.
So Keith, do you think that FinTech is one of the catalysts for this? Because of course, the financial view is to look at the process and optimize the crap out of it. If we start to apply that in small business on a very rigorous basis, is that the beginning of the end of a lot of the inefficiencies that are related to having to have a local space that you're trying to drive people to, as compared to having a well-articulated web service that allows people to ask you to come by, or to speculate or opt into sharing information with people, which also goes is closely tied to their sense of the value of their money. Is that where we might see some of this really start to blossom for the small and medium-sized business?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know that generally speaking on the finance side that it is further along though than a lot of other categories. And I think what's interesting is that as startup entrepreneurs, we often think about, oh wow, how would you go out and acquire SMB customers? And boy, that's going to be really difficult. And I think, to a large degree, there were a number of years that went on where VCs just didn't want to fund companies that were going to go out and be calling on SMBs. And so as a result, not a lot of companies were out there really truly trying to solve the problem. But I think to a large degree, we were thinking about it wrong. We were thinking about it inverted from what we should be thinking about it. And really to what Jeff is saying there, which is that if we can make it easy for an SMB to buy, that's the right way to be thinking about it, rather than how can I go out and find SMB customers and how can I sell to them. And so to the extent that we are using modern tools, modern technologies, the computer that's in every one of our pockets to be able to make it easy for an SMB to be able to buy, then I think that's also going to open up the channel for providers, whether it's finance or otherwise, to be able to be providing really innovative, great tools for those SMBs.
Well, and so that's exactly what we're talking about, is that we're also waking SMBs up to the need for the same sort of simplicity that aha moment when you got out of the Uber and you said, wow, I didn't even have to show anybody a credit card. Yeah. Do you see that starting to is that a matter of evangelizing right now for media and for companies that are seeking to sell marketing automation to tell these people that there is a different way to do business? And how do you foresee teaching that?
I think it's one thing that is just continuing to happen quickly. Again, I think you're seeing the change as it relates to the on-demand and physical goods in terms of what you talk about with Amazon. It's all physical goods. I think the difference is always when it comes to services. That's kind of hard to make an on-demand yoga studio because there's something about having to be present in order to do that. And so I think that the physical space aspect will remain at that service level. And then as you think about what are goods that people are producing and that physical product, that's the sort of thing that are, again, continue to get migrated away pretty quickly. Right. So I think that there's going to be the juxtaposition there. I think the first one, the ship's already left the station on what Amazon is doing and everybody's doing on physical. I think as it relates to services, it still remains to be seen how that's going to continue to unfold.
So you'll go to the hot room for the yoga, but you won't go for the Lululemon.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Jeff, what do you think?
I think to Keith's point, there's maybe a little bit of a hangover in the local space from our determination that local is sold, it's not bought. And so this idea of making it really easy for an SMB to buy is something that's new. And even for people that don't believe that an SMB will go and buy something themselves, we can still drive huge efficiencies in our sales growth. And a lot of the companies that we work with have to drive down their cost of acquisition in order to scale. And that the way to do that is to make services readily accessible and available.
If anybody has a question, Mike does have the microphone. You do? Oh, you don't? Oh, it's right there. But again, it feels like we're all talking about that there's a new discipline in small business that people have not really fully embraced or begun to put to work on behalf of their business. They're only being presented for the first time these easy-to-use services, and this is a problem that BIA Kelsey thinks about a lot, is how to articulate the change that we see necessary for a business to even succeed anymore. Simply being in the market and having a shingle out front doesn't cut it. Email, couponing, ratings, all the things that both of your tools do are going to be critical, but they're, again, only a fifth of the market at this point has even begun to embrace it. Is the cost of starting a small business now going to be significantly higher because of the technical investment necessary to be successful in your locally connected market? What do you think?
I certainly don't think so. I think that it will go the opposite direction, and I think that SMBs will find that they can actually deliver stellar service by using services and tools and be able to compete with otherwise, larger competitors and national types of competitors. So I actually think it goes the opposite direction. And in our world in finance, we have it's easy to be able to be more efficient when banks are so incredibly inefficient and just so difficult to deal with. You just go through the process of opening up a bank account, and you start to realize just how challenging it is for anybody to be able to work with a regulated financial institution. And so in some ways we get to be kind of just we have to be just a little bit better, and we can be the cleanest dirty shirt, and we can stand out from the rest. I think that some of the industries that have been focusing on this a little bit longer and focusing on how do we deliver efficiently services and products to SMBs and make it easy for them to be able to buy, I frankly think they're a lot further ahead than the world of finance, generally speaking.
What do you think, Brad?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Keith that I think that the finance piece, while it has a lot of other challenges associated with it, so I can empathize with what he's saying. So,
But if you were giving advice to your brother,
yep.
about starting a business, would you recommend that they invest in the retail space, or would you recommend that they invest in the marketing automation?
I would, yeah, the marketing automation. I think you've got to have that critical tool. We have a CRM tool, and I think without a CRM where you're capturing prospect information, you're capturing your customer information, you're effectively able to market it. The rest of it becomes not as nearly as relevant, and you're kind of more in a crapshoot, and you're hoping that things work out, spending a lot of dollars very inefficiently, and then you've got to have the right fundamentals and tools, which really again start with some of the core technology, which in the scheme of things really isn't very expensive relative to the cost of the whole business. So I think it actually will allow more people to be involved in small businesses, because you can do it. You don't have to worry about distribution as much, and you can do it from your house and do it from home. And as long as you get contact information, you can start running some effective marketing loops.
So really, it sounds like the home may be the best place to start a business.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're in physical goods, I don't see the huge value in the retail store. It's nice, but it's an expensive luxury at this point. So I think you've got to really be able to make that a value prop. I think most struggle with that, and so obviously there's certain things, restaurants or experiences, that are going to continue to thrive. But beyond that, I think I agree.
And Jeff, what's your thought, especially with regard to how this stuff is sold? Because agencies and YPs and media companies are seeking to integrate a lot of these services as an additional sale in the local market. But are they, at this point, selling after the point, too late in the process of a startup? Should that be the first thing that a startup is thinking about, rather than the last thing they think after we've got the shelves stocked, we're ready to open the doors, let's turn on the marketing?
Yeah, so in terms of the SMB, I think to begin with, they should be thinking about basic presence tools before they think about marketing automation systems. But because a lot of tools that are available right now,
Are they different?
Well, I think that they are.
Yes.
Yeah, I think basic presence is different than the marketing automation piece. But because a lot of different marketing pieces are already available and they're accessible and they can be used by an SMB, even though most SMBs won't actually do it, but they can set up their own Facebook page if they want. They can go and create a website if they want. Because a lot of these things are already available, it's critical that any marketing automation piece that you try to put in the hands of them is affordable. They can't go to a Marketo or an Eloqua or HubSpot system.
If there are no questions, yes.
What role do you guys see open source technologies playing in breaking down the barriers for SMBs approaching enterprise solutions in terms of marketing or reaching their customers?
And for the folks at home on video, the question is, what role does the panel see in terms of open source breaking down barriers for SMBs, especially with regard to the types of services enterprises are used to purchasing?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think open source can be critical in helping integrate different data points. So we're always thinking about data in terms of what information can we provide the SMB through the agency so that they can better understand what their marketing footprint looks like. And the agency can win if they can, number one, identify a number of things that the SMB is already aware of. Then number two, show them a bunch of things that they're not aware of, and then help shed some light on that. And I think some open source technologies out there can make a lot more data available to systems like that in ours.
Yeah, and in our space, when you're talking a B2C sort of solution, I think that I don't know that it really helps, because it's enterprise solutions like Salesforce really aren't designed for consumer businesses in terms of being able to market, and it's just too complicated of a product, no matter how easy it is. And if you talk to Salesforce today, they'll say that, don't even bother if you're really consumer facing in terms of using the tool. So I think it's nice. I think it helps clearly things like agencies to be able to win in that, but it directly to the small business, I don't think that it provides that much assistance.
And in fintech, the open source is really simply a transparent aspect of the functionality. Is open source an important part of the emerging fintech model, or is that are we still talking about primarily proprietary interfaces?
Yeah, I think it's still largely proprietary interfaces. I would say there's a lot of data that is available. Usually it's also proprietary and or confidential data that needs to be authorized in order for it to be, at least in our world, to be very, very useful. And while there's an awful lot of open source tools that we use in our own stack, it's none of that is directly exposed to our customers, but it certainly impacts our ability to be able to deliver those services in a cost-effective manner, for sure.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
It has been a pleasure to have you. We go into our last break, and then we'll come back for the last.